Hey, Infantini's, welcome back. Welcome.
So,
So we're doing another Q&A session, although we haven't had actually anyone write into our post about that. So don't actually have any questions right now. So we thought we'd just cover a topic that had come up during the week. I put a post into the group asking how much have you spent on personal development and consciousness work in the past 5 to 10 years, depending on how long your journey's been. And
Yep.
we had varying amounts. This was actually prompted by a friend of ours who's actually in the group, and she sent me to a post where a guy had posed the same question, and heaps of people there had written in like 50,000, 60,000. They're pretty common. One person had spent over 100,000. A few people less. People didn't even want to look at it because it was just
Too much.
embarrassing. And it sort of was really interesting. I was like, oh, I might ask this group too, how much people have spent and stuff. And I would estimate, I mean, our journey, both for you and I, man, has been going for like 15 plus years now. So since then, I mean, we had a little bit of an advantage because we were working at the company that actually promoted some of the stuff. So we didn't have to pay for it. If we had to pay for some of John's work way back when in the day, John 𝗙𝗢𝗪𝗘𝗧𝗧, that would have been horrendously more expensive.
Yep.
But both of us were salespeople. Not that we were good at sales, but we just were wanting to be around John's work. So
joined it so we could actually get access to the work.
so we could get free entry into the course. Yeah, so I think ours would have been up there as well, like 3 figures, 6 figures, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just made about 60 grand or something. I mean, yours might be a bit more these days, man, because you've sort of stayed on the path where I've sort of gone, I've done my own stuff, but I haven't done so many courses over the last few years particularly. But
I invested quite highly in a coaching program with a mentor, like a very small group, very hands-on, personalized kind of journey about 2 years ago. That was kind of the biggest investment definitely that I had made at the time, and definitely felt worth it at the time. Like it got some payoffs for it. But I guess that's where the question came in. Well, why we're asking this question was that we obviously embark on things and we pay for things because we think we're going to get something from it. So whether it's money you've invested too, because some people haven't spent a lot of money, so it's not about the amount of money that you've spent either. It's kind of about the amount of time and energy you've put into something as well as your money. Sometimes the money. Yeah, that's true. That'd be really hard to kind of estimate. But sometimes that money just kind of, adds that little extra kind of sting to the process. I guess that you make a decision to do something too, and you sacrifice spending that money on something else, for your own personal growth. But the question, came about from this idea of, do you actually feel like you got the really good return on your investment? Like, did you get what you thought you were going to get from that particular course or webinar or coaching program, whatever that thing is that you embarked on? And, what was it that you thought you were going to get? And then how does your results, if you like, weigh up in regards to that too? So
exactly. I mean, hours, holy crap, it would just be thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours. I mean, at the end of the day, it's interesting because this work becomes a way of life, and it's a way you look at things. And is it still work type thing? I remember where I used to process a lot of stuff. So I would my big thing was to lay on the lounge and process. And I would spend literally hours doing that. So I have done many, many years of doing that sort of stuff. That would be, literally thousands and thousands of hours. But I think it's probably since doing this work, if I reflect on it right now, since doing this particular work in terms of sort of saying, no, I'm infinite right now, rather than I'm still trying to work towards it, which does mean that you have to process stuff, and it's like you're still working towards something.
Somewhere to get to.
Sort of say, oh, no, I'm already it. It sort of stops, and this is what I was saying to this friend of mine, that it's sort of, you can jump out of the consciousness and personal development world, if you like, when you say, okay, enough of that. I'm actually just going to say I'm already there, and then see what happens. That's pretty much what you and I did. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen when I finally said, yeah, I'm it, but it just sort of felt right to actually say that.
Yes.
So then that was sort of that stepping into that, I felt like suddenly I wasn't processing stuff anymore. Not the way I have done. Certainly stuff comes up and you look at it and you go, oh, well, okay, I feel this. And you feel the emotion and all that, like that we talk about here at the Infinite Me, is like you feel the emotion and you sit with it and you go through that emotion. But that's very different to the head-based processing that I was doing previously. So now it just feels like it's all just in the flow. So like I go about my day, something might pop up. It's pretty rare actually these days, I've got to admit, that something really triggers me. Like the last one that happened was around Christmas time. And yeah, someone did something and I was fucking ropeable. So it was interesting to see how much rage I actually had about it. I got sorted out. I communicated with him and we had it out and all that sort of stuff. So it passed, but it was just really interesting. I don't even know what that was about still. Yeah. But that's quite rare for that to happen these days, where it's like so full on. Yes. It's just like those little blips. It's like, oh, that came up. Oh, that was interesting. I reacted to that. More sort of this observation type feeling now. So I don't feel like I'm spending hours and hours. It is now, pretty much a way of life. And
it comes
the way
up
I view the world more than anything. Like everything is through this lens of the infinite that we talk about.
Yeah. I think that's where that question does come up about the return on investment, if you want to put it in those terms, because we're kind of comparing it to the idea that you have, say you embark on a certain modality and you do all the things that you were taught to do that would going to get you this result, you know, like the more flow in your life, say the more ability to manifest things by keeping yourself in alignment. So say take something like the law of attraction. I know a lot of people that have kind of invested in courses that are all around law of attraction and how to manifest what you want and how to keep your alignment going, you know, at a good level all the time. And this idea of intention, needing to focus like diligently on something with no other kind of thoughts coming in. So all these kind of ideas that we kind of subscribe to. And then we kind of feel like, oh, okay, I have to do this thing now, and then I have to do that thing, and then I need to do this thing next. And then if I don't do that thing, I've got to go back to the beginning. And it becomes this really
17 seconds that you have to hold the focus for.
Yeah, like Abraham Hicks talk about. So there's a lot of really cool stuff, like definitely out there in the material that some of these teachers and things are sharing or channeling wherever the information is coming from. But then it kind of falls into these have tos. And if you don't get these things right, then it's not going to work for you.
Yeah.
And that kind of is already has the assumption underlying it that we're separate to the universe and we need to kind of align ourselves with the universe, which is somehow out there, and not who we truly are. And if we don't do these things, then we're not going to get the results that we want. And when you get really honest with yourself, you have to kind of look at that and go, I actually am believing that on some level, even if you tell yourself, no, I'm infinite, we're all one, we're all connected. But if you find yourself doing all these things or beating yourself up because you don't do those things, that's the other thing that happens too. It's just like, oh crap, I didn't do that thing today. All right, that means, okay, all right, make sure tomorrow I get in and I do those things in that particular order. And it sounds really silly when you say it like that, but when you look back on what we actually do and believe on our journey, I definitely fell for a lot of that. And then you kind of wonder why you're not getting the results consistently, but then you put it back on yourself. It's like, oh, that's because I didn't do X, Y, Z, the right way. But, from the bigger picture perspective, that's kind of taking that assumption that we're separate. So is it not working because we keep perceiving ourselves as separate? That's to me is the bigger picture. That's what it's trying to wake us up to, is that, hello, like you're still not getting the big picture. There's that other level to go to, that we're operating as, we're an infinite being already. There's nowhere to get to. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to align to at the end of the day. So it's interesting when you start to reflect a little bit on the things that you've kind of bought into. Yeah. So.
Just that comment from.
Oh, yeah.
Very fresh. Problem is, I can't see who it is. It's Facebook. Hannah. Okay. Hi, Hannah.
Hello. I thought it might have been from the comment. I was wondering.
Got a question for us?
We're just riffing about whatever at the moment. So if you have a question,
go for it.
And the floor is yours. Otherwise, we'll keep chatting.
We'll keep talking. Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, it's like, does it work that way in the first place, sort of thing, like, or have
Mm.
we just got that a little misconstrued along the way type thing, and or someone's come up with that idea of that you've got to do this, and then other people have bought into it, and then it becomes a bit of a movement, and you can see how it happens.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Start, pulling in. It's like, oh, I might be doing something wrong. So,
Yes.
I've got to go back to the teachings type thing, rather than questioning for yourself whether that feels true for you.
Mm.
For me, I don't have a morning routine necessarily, or any routine. I just sort of get up and do what I feel to do. So, luckily most of it's work, but yeah, it really is quite flowing sort of thing, and I feel that works better for me.
Yeah.
Could I be better served by doing, say, yoga every morning? Yeah, probably. And we're sort of working our way towards that. I've changed my whole eating strategy over the last month or two, and that's working really well, sort of thing. So I think it's this bit of trial and error type thing to see what works for you as well. And it's not necessarily following somebody's regime. You can see those regimes and see whether they work for you and test them out. But I think it is about just being intuitive, and that's the whole idea of all of this work now, is just being intuitive in the moment. Like, it's like, what do you feel to do right now? Oh, I feel to
Yeah.
go and lie down. All right, go and lie down.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so too. I think it is that idea of just doing the thing that lights you up in the moment, that brings you the most joy to do, that feels the most flowing. So if that means sitting out in nature in the sun for 20 minutes and just sitting in silence, not doing anything, then do that. If that feels like eating something, then you do that. Like, there is no kind of rules around what you need to do, and that's where we kind of fall into the trap. I think sometimes it doesn't mean that discipline might not come into it. If you really enjoy doing some kind of physical exercise and it serves you to kind of do that at a set time every day because that works for you, then you keep doing it. But when it starts to fall into that trap of, I need to do this thing, and then you get to the end of the day and you haven't done it, and you start beating yourself up and thinking that's going to cause some other kind of
Yes.
consequence, then you kind of know you're starting to buy into that illusion that, oh, I thought I was going to get somewhere from this. Like, I'm separate. It's bigger than me. I'm putting the power into it outside.
Yeah,
of
you
me.
sort of start putting the power into other things, don't you? It's like,
Yeah.
yoga has the power, or meditation has the power, or and so if you don't do it, then it's got the power and it's over you and somehow controlling you.
Yeah.
Hannah's got a question. When you're feeling really overwhelmed and emotions are up and down in rapid succession, what are your best tips for grounding and feeling into the infinite effectively? Good question.
Always best. Oh, that's another comment. Yeah. And she said, my eating strategy: eating everything always, best regime ever.
Yeah, that's what I was doing for a long time too. And now I'm on a 5-day water fast because I took on eating whatever I wanted for so long.
Yeah. But that's an interesting thing, actually, just quickly about that whole eating thing too, because half the time it's the guilt that we put on ourselves around what we're going to eat that causes the problem. It's not so much what we eat. Okay, yes, okay, you're not going to sit there and eat ice cream all day, every day kind of thing. You're going to start feeling pretty crap anyway, and that's usually the sign that your body's wanting something else. But it's that idea that the guilt that we associate with, oh, I won't eat that because it's bad, it's whatever, that's the judgment that holds those things in place, rather than just letting ourselves enjoy what our body wants in the moment kind of thing. But if you find yourself, you've got a pattern towards always doing that, there's something else underlying that to look at too. But yeah,
definitely. It is interesting with the eating stuff. And again, I think it's about finding what works for you as well. I was eating whatever I wanted for a long time. But there was a part of me, like, I don't know, it was sort of like it was okay for a while, and then suddenly it started to catch up with me. I was like, I'm not feeling like me. I'd look in the mirror, and I definitely had tons more weight on than I should have. And I was like, this just doesn't like match up what I think is me.
yeah.
It feels like me. And I was like, okay, this is really out of whack. So doing the intermittent fasting and 5-day water fast and just eating tons and tons of vegetables and bits and pieces. I've really found my flow now in doing that. But that works for me. It's just not going to work for everybody. But I find that actually really easy. So, and I think that's the whole idea of it. I got really sick, and I think I said this to you many times, man, that I wasn't going to try to lose weight where it was effortful, because I was so sick of doing that. I wanted it to be completely flowing, completely natural. And I just waited until that inspiration sort of struck me type thing. And I tried intermittent fasting and I went, oh, this is actually really easy. I find this super easy because I forget to eat anyway. So most of the time, like Jodie's going, have you eaten today? I was like, oh no, I forgot. So it's sort of like, it didn't worry me to just have, 4 hours of eating a day and 20 hours of fasting type thing. Like I was pretty much doing it anyway. So it became really flowing and really not effortful at all. And so the 5-day fast has been a little tough in parts. But for the most part, it's actually not been too bad either. And I feel much better for it. So it's, again, sort of that there's effort that goes into these things, but it's not effortful. So there's sort of a difference between those two things. You've still got to put some effort in.
Well, you felt called to do it too. I suppose that's the difference. Is like that felt true for you to do a water fast right now. You felt called to do it because for a long time you were kind of going, no, not really feeling called to kind of address the health stuff right now. It has to feel like
that's right.
Something that's an intuitive feeling rather than I need to do this thing because I need to lose weight or whatever the thing is that I should stop eating this because it's bad. Those type of thoughts that we have upon ourselves as well. Yeah.
And it sort of came in really quickly. Because I did say to you, I'm not going to purposely try and do anything. Like I want it to come I want it to come to me, not for me to go out and try and find what it might be. And then it did happen just really suddenly, actually, towards the beginning of the year. And I was like, oh, I'm actually eating heaps better. And I'm wanting to do yoga and I'm wanting to eat really well. And then I found myself sort of looking for bone broth recipes on the net and just looking up different things and seeing what does this vegetable do and, for your body and all that sort of stuff. So there's sort of this, and I was always interested in this, in nutrition itself, way back when, but I sort of left it and it sort of started to come up again. And I was like, oh, I'm actually finding myself actually researching these things again and getting really excited about learning, seeing these new recipes and trying new things that I've never tried before. And then Jodie got involved and I was just like, and she's just done, 3 days of the water fast as well. Like I never thought she would do that. And I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. So me just being in the flow actually, because that was always my thing. Oh, what if I do it and Jodie doesn't do it type thing? Like, does that make it difficult? Not that I wouldn't do it because she's not doing it, but it does make it a little bit tougher in the house.
Yeah, psychologically it's a bit.
Yeah, and she's eating away type thing, and I'm sort of like, I'm on my day 4 of my fast. So yeah, it's sort of funny how it's all shifted. Like, and she's right into the bone broths and all this sort of stuff. I thought she might think it was a bit weird, but she goes, oh, that's really good. And I was like, okay, so it's like all this support is there now. Like after doing all. So it's sort of quite interesting.
I think the good thing to kind of do when you're doing, eating is just an example of a way to kind of use the process, I guess, that we talk about too, is just that idea of doing what feels true for you in the moment, but then noticing when you kind of have a feeling of what that you want to do, but then you go against it. So it's that kind of idea. That's when your kind of ego kind of gets a hold of it. And this is where you can sometimes see some of your thought patterns and your limiting kind of areas that you kind of still buy into. If you were infinite and you could eat anything, I guess then it wouldn't affect you like those things, but you do things because you think you're going to get something from it. So say an example, someone just said something about quitting smoking. I've never been a smoker, but the idea of just stopping a pattern. So for me, it would be around sweet food. Like I definitely had an addiction to sugar. And going back about 5 years ago, I had adrenal fatigue and I had to address that because it was like that was the key thing that was driving the adrenal fatigue. But it was so hard at the time to really address that because there was so much tied up in eating sweet food. It wasn't just about the thing I was eating. It was like I had all these stories wrapped into it about it was like connection. That was where I kind of felt.
Childhood, like it's such a
it was from childhood stuff.
Everyone's childhood tooth in our family.
Yeah, and it was definitely this idea that when I get that absolute craving to do that, I was looking for some kind of instant gratification for sure.
Yeah.
To take away this feeling that I had of just like, I'm not okay. This will make me feel okay. Like, and it was sometimes it's okay to satisfy those things for yourself, to self-nurture kind of things sometimes. But this was not self-nurturing. This was a strategy of
Opposite.
addressing what was underneath it. So that's the thing, I guess, that Nat was talking about before, about this stuff will come up for you naturally when you kind of just start going, oh, I'm infinite, and you start living from that perspective. I'm already that. And when you start doing things that aren't coming from that space, it kind of comes up in your face, and you just kind of go, oh, okay, I can see where I'm doing that actually. And it becomes more of a conscious thing, and you can sit with the emotion that gets triggered, or you might make a different choice in the moment, or you may still engage in that thing knowing what you're doing. There's awareness around it too. So that's the shift, I think, as well. And you find then that you don't just naturally, you don't keep doing that thing all the time, because you're kind of aware of what's underneath it, what's driving it. And so I eat sweet food too, but I'm also super conscious aware when I go to it now for like a different reason. Like, it's like, oh, okay, there's that thing. Like, all right, do I feel like doing this thing? I could go and do something completely different and change the pattern. And that makes it go away half the time, and then you get to see what the thing that is underneath it sometimes as well. So, yeah.
It is interesting to see the patterns. Like when I did the first water fast was when we first got to Montreal here. It was like about 5 weeks ago. And Jody had gone to Nashville for a conference, and so I was just by myself here and doing it for 5 days. And I had a headache nearly the whole time, but I think it's because I had been eating carbs prior, so I wasn't sort of keto adjusted or anything. So I think it was that. But emotionally, it didn't worry me at all. Like I just knew for 5 days.
You'd made a decision.
Virtually nothing in the fridge anyway, because we'd only just arrived here. So we purposely hadn't gone shopping or anything. So there was really nothing to eat anyway. But there was just a nothingness because she wasn't here. Nothing was triggering. I was just like just there, just here, sort of thing. Like I just had set the intention that I was doing 5 days. So that was all okay. This time around, it's almost the opposite. So my physical symptoms haven't been that bad. But having Jody here has been really interesting. So she did 3 days of the water fast. Ideally, I probably should have started 2 days in her start, and we finished together, but I didn't do that. That was a bit silly. But just having her around has actually really triggered me so many times about food. And I was like, this is really interesting. And she was on a fast as well. So it was not that like she was looking for food. But it was just like, well, that's really interesting. Like that connection that's going on that I've got during the food.
I know I had that with my husband. Definitely, when he's around, it's more likely that we'll kind of go, oh, let's go out and have a coffee. Let's go and do this. Like, and it's always associated with food. Like I sort of had noticed that as well. Like it's always about going out and having an experience with it. And also, okay, we'll have lunch, we're out, or we'll have this. So there is definitely that association. So when he's home from work, which he has been for the last couple of months because he's been on long service leave, I've really noticed it's hard to kind of stick to what I would normally do that works for me. Most of the time I kind of want to go and do those things because there's that connection piece again. So I think there's still that thing underneath it. There's some link somehow, in there. But
So Hannah said, I often think I am craving a sweet food, then I question it, and I'm like, maybe smoke, maybe drink, maybe sex, maybe I'll contact a friend. Maybe it's like
craving
the feeling the discomfort. And sometimes we'll just sit.
One of my mentors had said to me one time, a really good thing to do, this is with any behavior that you're trying to maybe see what's underneath it. So it could be smoking, it could be eating, could be buying things, it doesn't really matter what the thing is. But actually you feel the urge to engage in that activity, and then consciously don't do that activity, but sit with the emotion that comes up underneath it. Because a lot of the time we don't allow ourselves, that's usually like a split second thing. We think, oh, I want to do that, and we go and do it and fulfill it straight away. And so that feeling goes away. But if we sit with the actual emotion that's coming up underneath the behavior by not engaging in the behavior, and try and do it for like 20 minutes, and then see what comes up for you, like what thought patterns are coming up, what are you saying to yourself, like, and just kind of get in touch with that emotion that's sitting underneath it that we're usually pushing away and not addressing. I remember her telling me about this guy that was pretty much a chain smoker, and he was in a relationship, and his girlfriend absolutely hated him smoking, was constantly sort of at him to sort of give up smoking. And he was just like, oh, well, this is me, you knew I smoked and all this kind of stuff, and really didn't want to address it. And then, but he was thinking it was a problem for himself too. And so he was doing some sessions with her, and she sort of was giving him a few things to do, and she gave him that exercise too around just like, don't engage in the activity to see what kind of comes up. And he kept doing this, and eventually he got to the point where he just naturally gave up because he could see how much it was affecting the connection he had with his girlfriend, which was actually his most important thing. And it was actually like almost a defense mechanism of pushing her away in some ways, because he didn't have to engage in all the stuff that he thought might come with going into an emotional relationship on a deeper level. And then he just woke up one day and went, I'm not smoking anymore. Like, and this was after doing, some of the emotional digging into that emotion underneath it. So it's kind of interesting when we do disengage those patterns that are sitting underneath these things, it becomes an easy thing to just give up. It's kind of, and it's not about giving up that thing either. If it doesn't feel true for you to do that, then you don't. But it's kind of that idea of just intuitively going with what feels in the moment. So I know when I had the adrenal fatigue and I was trying all different things, so I had to cut out sugar and I was drinking all these like horrible concoctions that were meant to kill the bacteria in your stomach. And I was trying everything under the sun at the time. And they all kind of worked. I was feeling better and all those things. I cut out gluten and I cut out dairy and sugar and all different things, and was definitely feeling better. But then I came across this really alternative kind of approach that my friend put me onto, because I just knew that there was something else underneath it. And this guy was a detoxification specialist, and he was advocating a raw diet, and in particular fruit only, as a detox, a really good way to detox your whole body. I was to do fruit only for like a really extended period of time. And that kind of goes against everything you hear about everyone saying, sugar's in fruit, don't eat fruit because it's got sugar in it. And it's just like, well, I'm on, adrenal fatigue thing, which, sugar is the main thing that kind of aggravates it, or keeps it going, if you like, and contributes to like the deterioration of your stomach lining, all different things over a period of time. And so I was just like, wow, that feels really counterintuitive. But this guy had so much research, and I watched some of these videos, just like, you know what, this actually feels really true for me. My body was actually craving it and I could feel it. And so I thought, I'm going to give it a go. And it was like the easiest thing I did. Like, it was like, I thought it'd be really hard to just eat fruit, like, because I loved bread and I loved like all these things. And then I did it for 10 weeks straight, and I just felt like not eating anything else. Like, it was the most amazing thing. Like, my husband would eat, lasagna in front of me, steak in front of me. He'd be always like, oh, do you want some? Do you want some? And I'm like, no, I'm actually fine. Like, he actually had more uncomfortable eating in front of me, thinking it was going to make me feel like I wanted that thing. And I was just like, no, this is what my body wants. And it's like, when you've made a decision about something, about anything like that, easy, because it's true. You're in alignment with that whole idea that we've talked about before, about the feeling comes through you and you act on the feeling. It feels true for you. Like, you don't get pulled off your path when you keep coming back to that true feeling, whatever that is. It just feels like the most natural thing in the world to keep doing that thing. You're not avoiding anything. You're not, running away from looking at something. You're not just, self-gratification sort of thing. Like, it becomes more about, no, it just feels true for me. It feels inspiring. It lights you up. Like, you feel infinite. And if that, want to put words on it like that, it's like you feel like you're invincible when you're doing that thing that's aligned with the true feeling.
Yeah. I think for me, giving up certain things, like I was smoking for a while, and I just, like that guy, suddenly just gave it up, went to Peru and went, that's it, I'm done. It's like, okay. And never thought about it since, ever. And I was like, wow, that was like the easiest thing in the world. And same with the food stuff I'm finding now as well. And it feels like, almost like, to go to the next level of consciousness type thing, to my next level of expansion, or I don't know, something like that, whatever the words are. It sort of feels like that. Like, it felt like with smoking, actually felt like it was holding me back from going to that next level and really sort of expanding myself. And same with the food. And so when I actually noticed that and went, oh, so my highest value is consciousness. And now I'm actually starting to hold myself back from my highest value by doing these activities. It just became really easy to let go of. So I think there's a bit of a values thing in there as well. So whatever your highest value is, and then just linking what you're doing type thing back to that highest value, or how is it stopping you from having your highest value by doing these things. And it sort of just was instant. I just went, right, I'm done. That's it.
I remember our dad did that too. Like, he used to smoke quite a lot when we were younger, and he used to do like the whole roll your own kind of, tobacco in the papers and stuff like that. And we were constantly on his back. I know, like, definitely my two younger brothers and I, I'm not sure what age we were, whether Nat was still around in the house or what, but probably we weren't that old. But we used to kind of be on his back every time when he'd get back home from work and on the weekends. And And then eventually he just decided one day, he just said, I'm not doing it anymore. He just gave up and he never ever went back to it. And he'd been smoking his whole life up until that point. So since like a really young teenager, it was kind of just his brothers were doing it. And so he started doing it, and it just became something everyone was doing back in the 60s and stuff. So it's just kind of, but he just gave up. I always remember that kind of this idea that he just went, no, like his highest values were obviously us and what we were sort of saying to him about, you're damaging yourself and we don't want you to die, or whatever we were saying to him, at the time. It obviously kind of
bit of a
he just decided one day that he wasn't going to do it, and he never went back. So I guess it's showing what you're saying, like when you align your values enough with the thing, and it doesn't mean you have to give up smoking. It's like not about that at all. It's just this idea of,
I don't think it matters.
What does it represent for you too? Like, why are you doing that thing? Does it feel like a true thing for you to do, or is it an avoidance strategy, or
loneliness? That's coming up a lot in the chat here right now. So, I get that. For me, I'm often craving stuff when I actually feel lonely. I think Kim said that. And then,
and saying loneliness is a big trigger for most addictions.
And I was looking at imaginary house hunting, and looking at loan rates. As long as you don't buy a house, I guess that's okay.
Because what you're saying is that idea that one thing leads into another, that leads into another, because that's that avoidance of looking at the thing underneath it. And it causes us to make decisions that don't feel true for us.
So Laura added a good point. Loneliness is a big trigger for most addictions. Sometimes we think it's boredom, but I believe it's an aloneness that we suffer in this non-connected society we've become. Feeling the effects of that, I think a lot of people are feeling that. Gave up for 2 years. I think this is Hannah. I barely thought of about that after the first couple of months, and felt so easy. Yeah, it does. Directly after my breakup, I fell back into it as easily as I'd become used to not. I know that'll be easily to let go of again at some point. And I think that's it. It's not about beating yourself up. It's like when you're ready, you'll know. And when you know, and it stops just like that.
Yeah.
That's my belief these days about addictions and stuff like that. I think it's just bringing awareness to it. As long as you're conscious about what you're doing, and you're not just like picking up a cigarette and lighting it and going through the cigarette, and you like 5 minutes later you wouldn't even remember they actually did that. It is being conscious of the fact. It's like almost to the point of, I'm having another cigarette right now and I choose to do that. Go and have it consciously, because the more you bring consciousness to what you're doing, then eventually it will just fall away itself anyway. Your natural propensity is to be healthy. That's our infinite state. So your body is always naturally wanting to go back to that. So that awareness is the thing that stops or starts to break down some of these patterns and stuff. Last time I quit smoking, I was the same. I believe when you reach a place of really standing in willingness to change habits, it goes easily. Until you get to that point, you won't change. And that's exactly right. I think, I want my partner to stop smoking. I was like, you won't get your partner to stop smoking until the partner wants to stop smoking. So don't worry about it. You get over your stuff about them smoking. Like if you've got a buzz point about it, then guess what? They're going to keep smoking. Keep bringing that into your reality until you stop rejecting it. But once you learn to love it and just accept it for what it is, and that's their choice, and it's got nothing to do with you at the end of the day.
I think it's about seeing what that thing's representing for you too. Like, why does that person need to change to make you feel comfortable? At the end of the day, it's like, what's underneath that sometimes as well. Is it just a genuine health concern? A lot of the time it's because, there's other things attached to it as well, why we want to stop somebody from doing a certain behavior.
So this will be Hannah. Loan rates leads to obsessing about credit scores. Then checking bank accounts, then worrying about money, then posting offers online, then crying that no one takes them up, then going back to bed, then I'm hungry. Then you have a cigarette.
But it is
we put ourselves in.
Like what you're writing there, Hannah, it's just that the idea that that's how when we're kind of really identified with the mind stuff and not really looking at what's going on underneath it, we do just keep going to the next thing, because it leads to that. Like that's where the looping kind of happens, where we're trying to relieve. We're always looking for that relief, like from whatever that thing is that we're trying to escape from. So it does look like story of my life in a paragraph.
Story of my life in a paragraph. We forgot to put the smoking part in at the end, but we get that.
But like it's a, sort of laughing, but it's not like laughing at you, Hannah. It's kind of like just going, yeah, that's what we do. Like that's
yep.
the thing that we do. But it's
my own version of that.
Yeah, we've all got that circular loop that kind of goes on until we kind of, step back and consciously kind of break it or step back and observe it and then go, wow, like, what am I actually trying to get out of this thing? Like, what is the thing I'm afraid of the most that I'm not looking at or not willing to go there and sit with that emotion that's coming up? It could be fear. It could be, dissatisfaction with your life. It could be just doubting yourself, like all those type of things that come up. But then, yeah, you sort of have to bring yourself back to that truth, don't you? Like, well, if I'm infinite, then do any of those things actually really matter? If nobody takes up my offer, if I have a bad credit score, does it?
If I smoke,
actually really matter? It's kind of
lay in bed all day, does it really matter? No, yes. Unless it matters to you. I mean, that's where we start creating the story. Is like, oh, I've laid in bed all day, so that means X, Y, Z, and we start creating the massive story, head story around what that means. And it hasn't meant anything; just meant that you laid in bed all day.
Yeah.
So what? You may not do that tomorrow, but the more you beat yourself up about it, guess what? You're going to go back to bed tomorrow and do the same thing. So it's sort of like whatever you're rejecting is actually the same thing that you're going to just keep repeating and repeating and repeating until you learn to accept it and let go of the judgment of it. And the judgment is the story that you connect to it. And it's like, this means X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And you let that story go of anything, doesn't matter what it is. Then you're in a position to shift it and change and have a choice again. At the moment, if you've got a story running, I'm always lying in bed, then guess what? You're always lying in bed. There's no choice there. You have to go and do that because that's what your belief is and that's what the story is. But then if you drop the story, then suddenly you have a choice. Okay, I could stay up today and actually do some work, or I could watch Netflix instead, or I could go out with a friend. So suddenly the range of opportunities that are available to you. So it is always about the story. And
sometimes you just have to do something to change the state as well. So it could be something that you don't feel like doing in the moment. So like you're feeling really sad and lonely, say a particular day, and somebody invites you out, your natural thing is, if you're going into that story, is probably going to go, oh, I don't really feel like being around people today. But maybe the pattern interrupt is okay, I'm going to go out. I don't really feel like it, but I'm going to go out and I'll see, like I'll give it half an hour, and then you're sort of, sometimes they're the ones that you have the best time of your life because your whole state changes and you kind of go, wow, I don't feel tired anymore. Like, it's just interesting. Sometimes we do need to do those, pattern interrupts to kind of shift our state to actually see what's going on sometimes, rather than keep going into the looping story.
Yeah, I mean, that often happens, isn't it? Well, like, particularly in business, I notice that, like, we're sort of struggling over an idea or a concept or a message or something like that. And it's like, I just can't get it. Like, spending hours on trying to, brainstorm it and all this sort of stuff. And then you just go, but like, let's just go to lunch. And then all of a sudden, out at lunch somewhere, unrelated, drops in, and you go, oh, that was it. And it's the most obvious thing ever. And it's like,
how can I see that?
Oh my God, how can I see that before? Like, this idea of giving space is such a big thing and it's so important. So led to so have another question.
I didn't answer the first one, did we? Let's go back.
So that's Kim. Kim's asking the next question. Yeah, I'll come back to your other question. I have another question. What would you suggest to do from an infinite perspective when you feel sad, but you don't really know why? Like, there is no real reason for it. You don't need a reason to feel sad. There you go. That goes against probably what most people think.
It's true.
But sadness is just an emotion in the range of emotions that we get available to us in the human game here. We have all sorts of emotions that we can use. And strangely, if you sit with sadness long enough, then sadness feels no different to happiness or to excitement or any of the, like, feeling motivated or whatever. Like, they're all just vibration levels. They're all just energy. So if you're sitting there, I wouldn't actually go in and try and find where it came from, because that's oftentimes what therapy will do, or try and find where that actually sourced from. But it is about the moment right now. You've only got this moment. There is no past or future. There is only the present moment. So right now you're feeling sad, then it would be literally just sitting with it. Sit with that emotion and let it come up.
Let it come up.
You
Yeah.
invite it into your space to come up, because the more you can do that, you'll realize that you're not actually, it's not part of you. It's actually just an energy that sits usually in the physical body somewhere. And if you
The body's probably wanting to sense it.
where it sits in the physical body, sometimes it can make that separation between you, what you identify as you, and the emotion. Because oftentimes what happens is the ego grabs hold of it and goes, oh, I'm a sad person. It's like, no, you're a person that's feeling sad right now. There's a big difference between those two things. You're not an angry person. You use anger to express yourself every now and then. So when you can get to that point of separation of all emotions, then they become tools. So they're not actually who you are. They're not identities of yours. They're actually tools to use in your expression here in the human form. So personally, I would just sit with it. It's not going to hurt you. Sit with it. It'll get probably more intense for a while. Give it space. Bring in that idea of space into it, and let it come up. Let it come up fully. Feel it. Feel it with every fiber in your being. And the more that you can do that for every emotion that comes up, then it no longer runs you anymore. So when something triggers again about sadness, you might feel it for a brief moment. After you've done it a number of times, I'm not talking about after the first time, you'll never feel sad again. But bit by bit, you'll start to realize with all emotions, and sadness just being one of those, that they don't have control over you anymore. They don't actually affect who you are or how you go about your life. You can actually sort of just move past them. So they're really just energy balls, if you like, if you want to think of it like that, sitting somewhere in your energy field and in your body, and they just have to be looked at like everything else.
To be released. Yeah.
And they just want to be released. So oftentimes when sadness comes up or any emotion does come up, it's actually because it wants to be released. So oftentimes what happens is like, oh shit, I'm feeling sad again. My God, I was feeling sad last week. And we push it back down again. Instead of going,
or why do I feel sad? And we start to kind of go into that idea of looking at all the reasons we might be sad, thinking that it's a bad thing we have to kind of get rid of too. Like I shouldn't be sad, I should be happy. You know, there's all those sort of thoughts that can go on as well, because that's what kind of gets projected at us a lot of the time, is that sadness is bad. So it's kind of that idea too of just sitting, as Nat said, sitting with it because it's wanting to come up, and you may get some conscious awareness in time of what that sadness was about, but you might not too. So it's that idea that we don't actually need to know, which is sometimes a hard thing to break. I definitely had that always wanting to know. And like I would sit there and process things and then kind of go, oh yeah, that's why. Yeah. So I'd get the insight from it. But that became like almost like an addiction for me at times too, of that the needing to know why things were coming up. But now it's just more around that, oh, it's an emotion, it just wants to be expressed, taking away all the stories around it, all the labels around it. So not even calling it sad anymore. It's just sitting with this feeling that's in my body. You might start off by sitting with it, kind of going, okay, this is what sadness feels like. But then eventually just even dropping the words away from that and any of the stories,
that's a good idea.
The associations that you have with what sad means, and just actually tuning into that feeling in the body. So kind of like what we were doing in the 22 days, Kim, where we just sort of sit with that. We just sit with an emotion and feel the energy in the body and just see where it goes in the body. Like it might intensify, it might move around, it might just be in your little toe, like who knows, like where it kind of sits, like just sort of allow it to be and invite it in, and then just see what happens with it too. And as Nat said, it may take several days, it may take a week, it may take 2 minutes, like who knows, it doesn't really actually matter.
The more you get used to doing that practice of inviting emotions to come in when they come up and just seeing it. I think what really helped me over the years was knowing that when an emotion does come up, particularly when it comes up really intensely and it feels really yuck, is that it's trying to release itself. So if I just told myself that, I felt instant relief. It's like, I'm not doing anything wrong. So, okay, that's the first step in relief, is not blaming yourself for it. So it's like, okay, it's been sitting in my physical form. It needs to come out right now. So what would be the best way to actually allow that to come out? And it might be you don't feel to sit with it. It might be you want to write it out, or you might want to talk to somebody about it. Like you've got to go with what feels true for you. What works for me is actually sitting with it and allowing it to release itself that way. Because I feel it come up, gets more intense. I can feel it where it is in my body. I can usually identify where it is. And then you'll feel the energy of it, and it does just feel like energy. And then you'll start to feel it just dissipate. And then it's almost like I can feel my brain rewiring itself. Like I can actually feel that at times. And it just suddenly disappears. And that's it. Done. End of the process. But yeah, big word here, allowing, 100%. That's exactly what it is. Allowing it to come up. If it's always knowing that whatever comes up in your space, whether it be an emotion, an event, a person, an experience, whatever it is meant to be there. Otherwise it wouldn't be there. So that's the first step in relief, is like, okay, this is meant to be here. I don't necessarily know why it's meant to be here in each moment straight away.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a bit hidden, and you just have to wait for the answer, like, to that, is why is this here? And it reveals itself bit by bit. And this happens all the time in terms of this revealing of, there's a bigger picture at play which we don't get to see. We're not privy to that at the human level. So when you can just sit in the knowingness that you're okay, whatever's going on, and that there is a bigger reason at play of why you're there and going through that, experience at that time, then that does help, because it allows you to stay open. And that's the biggest thing. Stay open-hearted, because what happens is something comes along in our space that we don't like. We don't know why it's there, and so we just shut down. And then it just stays and it stays and it stays and it stays, and we keep having the same feeling over and over again, the same experiences over and over again, because it hasn't been able to reveal itself. But if we can stay open-hearted, and that's another thing to really just keep in mind, is when you go to shut down, keep open. Like, and it's the hardest, sometimes the hardest thing to do. Like, particularly if having a fight, an argument with someone, or something really hurts. Someone might be breaking up with you. Like, who knows what's going on? But something's happening and it's really painful. The hardest thing to do is to stay open. Like, keep that open heart and go, I just trust whatever's going on right now is actually meant to be happening right now, because it feels really shit. But then if you can do that, then you get the gift on the other side of it. And that's really what I was trying to show you all the time, is the gift on the other side. And there's always a gift on the other side.
So I think when we avoid any feeling, we don't keep addressing it, we push it down, that's when we start to do other actions that might not be in alignment, because we're trying to relieve ourselves of that feeling, but it's not going to relieve that feeling, because we're not actually addressing the emotion that's coming up. So it will pop its head up in all different ways. It may come up months later, and it will be, something in your face will kind of come up, and that emotion will be there again. And but when we do sit with the emotion, say like sadness, there could be something underneath it, like there's some desire that you're not letting yourself even see right now. And so the sadness is kind of like an internal feeling that you're not sort of in alignment with this desire. Like, you're not letting yourself actually just kind of go, I really want this thing. Like, it feels really true for me. And so there's this sadness that kind of starts to pervade everything. And so once you sit with the emotion, I'm not saying this is what it is, but it's that idea that sometimes you might sit with an emotion and then an action becomes really clear afterwards. It's like, oh, I really want to do that thing. And you kind of go and do it now, because you've sat with the emotion. It's out of the way now. It's like you've pulled the clouds back and you can see clearly again now. And that's what does happen when you do sit with the emotions too. It's just sometimes there is some really clear thing behind it. And other times it's just, okay, that was just my body needed to get rid of that energy. Like, it was just literally an energy. Maybe it's an old energy that's been triggered by something that you have no idea what it is. And you don't even need to know what it is. Your body just actually feels like, okay, it's time to get rid of that now. Time to release that. I've had at times too where I've just felt like a really heavy energy sitting on my chest. And I remember there was a time maybe a couple of months ago, just before Christmas, and I just had to lay on the floor because I felt like I literally couldn't do anything. It was such a heavy energy. And I just had to lay there for about an hour until it just went. Like, and I was like, I still had no conscious idea of what that was even about. Like, it was just this idea of just okay, let it come up, let it go, whatever the thing is. And it felt really uncomfortable at the time. It just felt really like, it felt like an old energy that was just coming up to go out of my body. And it just kind of went. Eventually I just got up and it was like, went back to normal. And I was just like, okay, that's weird. But it was just, but by me not kind of engaging it and kind of putting a story around it and trying to work it out, which is what I definitely would have done like 2 years ago even. Definitely would have been doing that. Like, it's kind of, and I would have got all these insights out of it, and probably not saying that that's a bad thing either. Sometimes that does give you some sometimes you do need to sit there and consciously process something. But this was more of an addiction to that, that idea of needing to know, whereas this just sat with it and it moved. And so it's like, okay, never actually knew what that was about. It doesn't really matter either. But I felt...
I had an experience like that the other day when we did a breath session with a friend of ours in LA. And so he took us through and stuff. It's the first time I've ever done breath work like that.
Breath work.
And got to the end and I was like curled up in the fetal position, and I just had this overwhelming sense of love for the doctor that delivered me and delivered you too, and all four of us. Yeah, Dr. Howe. It was the weirdest thing. And I was just like, okay. I mean, he was our doctor like most of my life, I suppose. But it was just that, like, our family doctor, and I was just like, okay. And I just could see him so clearly. He was talking to Mum, and I was a little fetus in Mum's tummy still, like I was only like 2 months old or something. And it was just like as clear as day. I could hear them having a conversation, and I just had this overwhelming sense towards him of love. It wasn't towards Mum or Dad or him. And I was like, that is the bizarrest thing ever. Like, it literally is one of the weirdest things ever. And I was like, I'm not going to try and analyze what is going on there. It's just like, it is what it is, whatever, wherever it came up, it's why it came up. I don't know. But sometimes it's just weird. Like, it doesn't matter.
I was just going to say too that it's kind of sort of related, but a little bit different. But this idea that we don't need to know where something comes from. I just remember my sister-in-law asked me recently about this idea that, do we actually need to know what happened to us in our past to release like an emotion around it? Because she had this particular thing that she's been trying to kind of work through, and she's gone to see a few different people, and people are kind of suggesting to her, oh, well, you need to kind of find out what happened in your childhood, or you need to find out these things. And she's like, but I just don't know. I don't have any conscious memory of it. Like, how do you resolve something when you don't have a conscious memory of it? Like, do you actually need to? And I said, well, I believe now you don't. I don't think you do. If you do need to, it will be shown to you. Like, it will become, it'll either come up in your awareness, or you'll be attracted to something that will help you get to that point of remembering that thing, if you like, kind of thing. Like, you'll be attracted to a particular person that will, you're going to go, I really feel like going and seeing that therapist or that whatever, that practitioner of whatever modality, and you don't quite know why. And then sometimes that will bring up some awareness. But I said to her, no, it's more about sitting with that emotion, that thing that you're trying to resolve, like that, whatever that emotion brings up in you, whatever that thing triggers in you. So it's some kind of emotion it's triggering in you. That's where the gold kind of sits. It's not about the conscious knowing of why something happened to you or what happened to you either. So I think our mind just naturally wants to kind of understand things as well. And
it is only the mind that actually wants those stories attached to that emotion, because that's what it does. So whenever you've got questions like that and you're trying to work things out, it literally is your ego trying to work it out. It's not actually your infinite self or your intuitive self, your true self. It's just feeding the ego at the end of the day, which is why almost not going into the story is actually better. Because if you start going into the story, it's very hard to get into the deep feeling of the emotion, which is the most important part. So the story only is there to trigger the emotion, in actual fact. It's like going to the movies. So we go to the movies, there's a storyline playing out, but the thing that we get out of the movie is the emotional journey that it takes us on, that hero's journey, which is why we love it. So in a really good movie, it's got lots of special effects and it's got lots of drama and ups and downs and stuff you didn't expect and all that sort of stuff. That's the storyline doing that. But what it's doing to you is creating a whole bunch of emotions inside. And life is exactly the same. So it doesn't matter what the story is playing out, ultimately. It's actually, what are you feeling? Like, that's what it's all about. We're all emotional beings. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
So, I just want to say hi to Jasmine, who's in the house. And
hello.
Hi. And so this was Hannah's original question. When you're feeling really overwhelmed and emotions are up and down in rapid succession, what are your best tips for grounding and feeling into the infinite effectively? I think starting with grounding, you're right there. At the end of the day, as much as we're infinite and there's energy, we still have a physical form, and it has to be recognized and looked after. So this is your vehicle here in 3D reality. So it is about grounding, because oftentimes what happens is, particularly when we do a lot of this type of work, is that we get really in our heads, and it's really, really hard then to actually sort of, you automatically get overwhelmed and emotional because your head does that. That's what the mind does. It kicks in and it brings in all the stories, all the emotion, all this stuff swirling around and round and round type thing. And we get so, because the mind has the ability to see both sides to everything, so the positive and negative, the pros and the cons, it's very hard to make a decision from that point. So when you're really in your head, that's why you can't make a decision. So it is really important to actually come back and ground yourself. And I find breathing really, really important. And it doesn't have to be formal breathing type practice. If that works, that's great. It's really just slowing the breath down, like, you know, 6 in, 6 out. Really, really simple. Just doing
It's
something.
usually when we're overwhelmed, we're taking really shallow breaths. When we kind of pay attention to it, we're kind of, our heart's racing, we're really shallow breathing, taking sometimes just those deep breaths, for like 10 deep breaths in a row, just sort of taking 5 minutes. It's just like, do I need to do something right this very second? Am I in immediate danger right now where I need to remove myself from? If that the answer is no, which most of the time that's true, it's just our head that goes into that panic urgent mode that we need to act from. Just slowing your breathing down for a couple of minutes is probably, you know, pattern interrupt, something that can interrupt that pattern of shit, I've got to do something, you know, that reaction mode that we fall into.
But often the breath will give that space as well. So the breath is our connection back to that space and the one. So it is, you'll find that expansion. So all the stuff that was so cluttered and filled, space that was filled with thoughts and stuff, we can't get clear of that to even register with the infinite at that point. Like it feels, we still feel so disconnected. So like just breathing and just stop. Like, take a moment to just stop.
And that sitting still, but like consciously sitting still and imagining, like breathing in, but even just imagining your thoughts kind of stopping and swirling around, like that idea that you're the eye of the storm. Like the thoughts could be still spinning around, but you're still the center of it. Like they're not you. The stories are not you. They're stories. They might feel like they have a lot of power right now, but you're separate to them. You're the awareness that sees the story. That's who you truly are. So you're the breath. Use that to sort of bring you back into your center. And even that idea of grounding, literally like that idea of earthing yourself. Like if you can stand outside on the earth somewhere, like, you know, assuming you don't have like snow, you know, if it's freezing cold and you can't stand outside or something in the snow, but that idea of just like standing on the earth, like a sitting on the earth, there's a whole bunch of science around that idea that too is just like it's because the earth is always neutral. It's just that it brings you back to that neutral space too, of just like sitting on the ground for 10 minutes, like, and just breathing and taking a moment to just still the thoughts, like that I don't need to do something right now. Because usually when we're in those overwhelmed sort of moments, we're thinking, I need to take action right now. There's something I need to do right now. And maybe it's just like, no, just stop it still. Like that's the pattern interrupt, is like, I don't need to do anything right now, and just sit with the thing and see what comes up, rather than acting from an emotion, like reacting and taking an action. It's not necessarily true for you in that moment. Saying something that's not true for you in that moment, you know, whatever that thing is, you know, even if it's in the middle of a conversation and you can feel that reaction coming up, sometimes you've got to stop yourself mid-sentence. You go, you know what? I need to take 5. I need to come back because I'm going to say something that I know is not true. It's a reaction sort of thing. I need to kind of go away and remove yourself from a situation if you can too. That's really triggering if it is that an immediate thing like that. And sit, do the breathing. Just take 5, isn't that saying?
And you know, stretching the body, doing some yoga and stuff like that can really get you back into your physical body again, rather than in the head up here all the time where all the thoughts sit, stuff like that. But that visual on the eye of the storm, the unmoving mover, is a really good one to keep in mind, sort of thing. It's like you can picture yourself then as like, even in your physical body, standing there and everything just swirling around, whether it be the stories and the thoughts. Like the thoughts are not even yours. They're dropped in from the infinite as well, because everything is infinite. So they're not your thoughts. So it is about coming back into that space again and allowing, before taking the next action. You know, like any action that we take should be inspired action, not out of desperation. And so just taking that moment to create that space allows the decision that's already been made, because all decisions are made on the infinite level, not at the human level. So then it just drops in. It's like, go and do this next. It's like, okay. And, you know, bringing it back to just really small steps. You know, it might be take the next breath. Take the next breath. Stretch your leg right now. Get up and walk around for 5 minutes. Like, it might be that simple.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely. If you're in super overwhelmed, sometimes it is something as simple as
just
that.
like really, really simple
Next moment
stuff. To come back, because what it's trying to do is get you back to the present moment. So the breath will bring you back to the present moment. Sitting on the ground will bring you back to the present moment. And just going step by step, really consciously, that will also bring you back to the present moment. So in the present moment, none of the stories exist. So the present moment is the infinite. So the stories only ever sit in the past and in the future. So when we think of a story, it's either about the past or it's about the future. You're not actually thinking about a story present moment. Like, you bring them into the present moment, but it's always about the past or the future, a fear of the future, or a guilt or an emotion about the past. Yeah. And you bring that.
And maybe too, you may be aware, potentially, I'm not sure, maybe if your head's spinning so much, you might not be, but you might be able to tune into the emotion that's being triggered by what's going on too. So sometimes if you can identify what that emotion is, you may take, once you've done some breathing or whatever to kind of just still your thoughts for a little bit, you may just want to sit with that emotion. Exactly what we're just talking about before with in regards to Kim's question, just that idea of sitting with that emotion that's probably where all those thoughts and stories are coming from anyway. That sort of triggers that sort of cascade of, you know, shitty thoughts that kind of come up, and sort of you go on that sort of rampage then, you know, that looping story. So maybe you can sit with that emotion, and that might just stop that whole looping thing anyway. Sometimes too, we're pushing that emotion away, and so it keeps going. Like, we keep feeding the shitstorm in our head kind of thing by not actually addressing the emotion sitting underneath it as well. So maybe if you have some awareness around that, spend 5-10 minutes just feeling that emotion as well, letting it express itself, like in whatever form. Sometimes you might just need to have a really good cry. Like, I've done that before too, where the emotion's just so overwhelming that you just need to kind of express it out. I think Kim actually even said before about, I'm not sure it was Kim, says I like expressing it with sound. When I think about it, like I said, that idea, sometimes you do just need to actually release it from your body, and then you feel better. Like, it's just that kind of, it wants to be expressed in some way, shape or form sometimes as well. So go with what feels in the moment, like you feel like you need to do as well. So
absolutely. Hello to Sandy Therry. How are you? Good to see you here.
Hello.
If you have a question, please throw it in. We'll probably wrap up very shortly, but if you had a question you wanted to ask, you're most welcome.
Yeah, if anybody has anything, put in the comments.
Thank you for everyone for being here and asking cool questions and having a really good discussion and sharing your thoughts on different things too, which is really good.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's what these sessions are all about. So it's really cool. I think everybody benefits from hearing these stories and reading your comments and things like that as well. Any questions? Because
you realise that we're all the same.
Questions. we're all reflections of each other at the end of the day.
Yeah, but we all realise then too that everybody goes through this stuff too. Like, I'm not the only one that kind of spins out sometimes. I'm not the only one that kind of feels like I can't get control of my, you know, my head at times. It's just like, no, we all do it. Like, it's kind of all part of the journey.
Like, if the end of the day all we're looking for is relief, like Abraham says type thing, and I do believe that's true, like a lot of the time, then it's just relieving to know that other people are going through exactly the same thing as you. Like, we are literally all reflections of each other in consciousness. And I think that's why group work and these sorts of sessions of coming together and asking questions and seeing each other's interactions and questions actually is really important.
Yes,
because it does help this stuff. So
and bring it back to that idea of, like, the, you know, what Nat said before about sitting, you go to a movie because you want to go on an emotional journey, and when you're sitting in that movie, cinema, there's a part of you that's aware that it's not real. Like we know it's a movie, but we still get engaged in the storyline. So for the 2 hours that you're sitting there watching the movie, you're engaged. Like if it's a good movie, it's got a good script line, you know, like you're really engaged in it, and you kind of blur the lines of what's real and what's not. And then you know, the lights come on and you kind of go, okay, well, that was a really cool experience. But then our life is actually exactly the same. It's just that we think it's real and that we kind of, it's different to a movie, and it's like, it's actually no different. It's just a story playing out in front of us, and we get to interact with that story, and we get to go on this emotional journey. We have ups and downs, and we have highs and lows, and it's only when we put the stories around it, the judgments around those stories, like from the infinite perspective, everything's neutral. There is no positive, there is no negative. It's just an emotional experience to go on. So this idea of sitting with emotions and letting them come up, we kind of get to observe that. It's just like, oh, it was just energy. It was only the story I put around it that kind of said that was bad, that shouldn't have happened. Oh, that felt really good. I shouldn't have, you know, that I should do more of that. And it's only those things that kind of make it feel so real that we buy into them. But it's no different to a story playing out on a screen in a movie cinema. Like it's just the same. If we treat it more like that and just kind of go, okay, I'm infinite. This is an experience to have in this moment. So when we're feeling overwhelmed, just like, why am I making this so real? Why am I taking this so seriously? Like, it's kind of, where are these thoughts even coming from? Are they even mine? Like, what stories are coming up that I'm believing are true right now? And sort of stepping back from that and having that awareness too. Sometimes that's enough to kind of break the patterning that's going on too. You can kind of see that you can even laugh at yourself sometimes when you're in such a shitstorm in your head. You're just like, wow, look at that. Like, it's just
happening right now, seriously. This is it's almost become so ridiculous. The storyline becomes so overwhelming and so out there. It's like, this can't be real, because this is the most ridiculous storyline right now that's going on. Like, it almost needs to get to that stage sometimes of like, this is just ludicrous. And you finally wake up and go, oh, it's just a storyline. Don't worry about that. Like, it's almost like you're an actor in your own movie. That's pretty much what it is. And when you go about life actually looking at yourself as an actor, everybody else is just actors as well. And there's a big screen here, a big set that we're all walking around on. It's a bit like The Truman Show, if you've watched that. That gives you a good visual, that movie. And it's like, you don't take things so seriously anymore, because it's just like, and it is playful. I don't know who said that, but thank you.
Yes.
It is literally quite playful, Kim. Because nothing affects you anymore. Like, an actor on a set is not affected by things. Like, they're just going through the motion. They get the script. They stand on the set.
The character.
The character. They take on the character. They, that sort of method acting type thing. Like, and it's literally like that. It's like method acting. But nothing that's going to happen in that scene is going to hurt that person. Like, there's stunt people if they really can't do it themselves. Otherwise, it's a controlled stunt and all this sort of stuff. Like, all this stuff is happening behind the scenes that we don't get to see, and then we just see the movie on the screen. But the same thing is literally happening here. Like, you can't hurt yourself in this game, in this movie set that we're on. It's just, what do you want to play with? Like, what do you want to go and do? What character do you want to play? You can play this character today and another character tomorrow. You don't have to stay in your character. We get this whole sense of reinvention at times, and it's like a big thing. And it's like, you should be doing that all the time. But I guess as we get more into this, and that is the infinite game time. It is literally like a movie set, and it's just fun. Like, when you are everything, when you really realize that you're infinite and you're everything, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to get, because you're already everything. You're already able to do whatever you want. So then it becomes a playground. That's why we're here, is to play the game, play in the playground with each other. And that's why it is good to have, a group like this, or people coming together in this work, because it's like, we get to play with this together. Like, imagine a couple of people waking up and going, oh, I'm just here to play. Like, I am everything. I just have whatever I need in the moment, and I just go about my life and I have a great time. Imagine people coming together like that and playing that game. Like, that's the cool stuff. That's where the game really starts to play, because you get to play with other infinite beings.
And there'll be things on our journey that will feel really true for us to do, that do light us up. So there are those things that make us feel really good, but they're not coming from a ego perspective of trying to satisfy a desire that's, being fueled by some other kind of limiting belief or avoiding an emotion or something like that. These are the things that just feel that idea that we talk about, the infinite feeling kind of comes through you, and it's just done. Like, it's an inevitable kind of outcome. It's just like, this feels really true for me right now, and you take the action step that's in alignment with that thing. So sometimes there is certain things we're called to in life that are for us to do and only us to do. Like, it's kind of just feels like that too, and it feels really true. And we go on that journey and we do those things, but that's just a part of a storyline too. Like, at the end of the day, it's just like, oh, that's what my character's here to do. That feels really true for me. That's in my storyline, to have that experience, unique experience, this unique viewpoint on the world. This unique relationship.
You've got a storyline and other people have a storyline, and they don't necessarily connect. Like, you still have your own storyline playing out. You get to mix and mingle with each other, of course, like you do on set, like any movie set. You have your characters come in and support characters, but everybody has their own storyline playing out. And it's really not for us to judge each other's storylines.
At the end of the day, it's all coming from the infinite rule.
Exactly. No one storyline is better than another storyline. One storyline is not more spiritual than another storyline. That's another thing that a lot of people fall into, is that I'm on the consciousness journey and the spiritual journey, therefore I'm more spiritual and conscious than you. And it's like, it's still the infinite storyline. Like, you can't ever escape that. So it's more conscious than anyone else as such. Might seem like that in the game.
I'm wondering, that said there's a book called The Game. Is that the one that the movie is based on? That's called The Game as well? I'm not sure if it's the same.
Which had Michael Douglas. It was filmed many
because that's a really cool movie, that concept of, like, how do you know it's real? Like,
movie, if you get to watch that or read the book, perhaps. I haven't read the book, but
if it's the same thing, I'm not sure.
Same one. It's freaking awesome. And Laura said, right, Mandy, compassionate detachment of you and your story. And I sing Let It Be to myself, kind of my mantra. I like that. Let it be. That's about right.
Yes.
Very cool. All right. Well, we might wrap up there at 11. Oh, it's not 11. It's 11:25.
Okay, it says the time. Amount of time. Yes.
Amount of time, Sounds like a good time to wrap up. Cool. Thank you so much, everybody, for contributing and being here. It's been awesome. We've really enjoyed this. We love these sessions. So thank you so much for indulging us in our passion. It's been really cool. Cool. All right. Well, we'll if people want to have these sessions, we can come back and do more of these sessions, of course. And thank you for everyone that contributed to my question into the group about interaction and stuff too. It really has helped a lot.
It's actually
gone away and reworking a whole bunch of things right now in the background, and it feels a lot more aligned, funnily enough, to us. So I think it's gonna be cool. So I'll let you know in time when that comes out. Cool. All right. Well, thank you, and we'll catch you again soon.
Thanks for joining.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.